pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Morgan.
Here.
Alderman Goonan.
Here.
Alderman Long.
here.
Alderman Fajardo. Alderman Tony Sapienza.
Here.
Alderman Cantor.
Here.
Alderman O'Neill.
Here.
Alderman Lavasser.
Here.
Alderman Terrio.
Here.
Alderman Ed Sapienza.
Here.
Alderman Burkish.
Here.
Alderman Berry.
Here.
Alderman Vincent.
Here.
Alderman Thomas.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The purpose of the public hearing is to hear those wishing to speak in favor of or in opposition to the proposed zoning ordinance amendment. The clerk will present the proposed zoning ordinance changes for discussion, at which time those wishing to speak in favor will be heard, followed by those wishing to speak in opposition. Anyone wishing to speak must first step to the nearest microphone when recognized and state his or her name and address in a clear, loud voice for the record. Each person will be given only one opportunity to speak. Comments are to be limited to 3 minutes, and any questions must be directed to the chair. Would the clerk please present the proposed zoning ordinance change?
Item 1 is an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance, Chapter 155 of the City of Manchester Code of Ordinances to provide reasonable accommodations to disabled persons by defining disability and adopting RSA 674-33, Section 5.
I would ask Jeff Belanger, Planning and Community Development Director, to make a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, members of the board. As the Mayor said, I'm Jeff Belanger, Director of Planning and Community Development. And as Mike said, this is a public hearing regarding proposed amendments to the Manchester zoning ordinance. In your packet for this evening, you have the exact language of that proposal. You also have a letter that goes into some detail on what the amendment would do, what the amendments would do, and their significance. I'm not going to go into all the detail that's in the letter here in this initial presentation, but I'll give you a quick summary if that's all right. So the purpose of this amendment is to amend the zoning ordinance to enable the Zoning Board of Adjustment to grant what are called reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. The federal laws at issue here that are being incorporated into this zoning ordinance are the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. Those laws require that all municipalities grant what are called reasonable accommodations from their zoning ordinances. When doing so would enable disabled individuals to have an equal opportunity to use and enjoy their property. So that is the kind of federal mandate, but the federal laws do not describe an exact process for how that reasonable accommodation needs to be provided, and that process is detailed in state law, and so that's the state law adoption that is part of this amendment process. And the way that the state law works is that a person who is disabled can apply to the Zoning Board of Adjustment and can request a variance as part of the reasonable accommodation process. And that variance needs to only meet 4 of the usual 5 variance criteria. So normally, anyone applying for a variance has to meet 5 criteria. The reasonable accommodation process established by the state allows a disabled person to meet 4 rather than 5. So it's an easier path to a variance. That is the reasonable accommodation process set out in state law. So I think it's important to note that these laws that we're talking about, federal and state laws, they already apply. The City of Manchester already follows these. All municipalities in the state of New Hampshire follow these. They're bound to follow them as they are already existing state and federal law. So the adoption of these proposed amendments doesn't really have a practical or legal effect. The Zoning Board of Adjustment today already uses this process. They have in the past. They would do it again whether or not this were adopted because that's the law. So the purpose really of adopting these amendments is a couple of things. First, it enables people in the City of Manchester and the members of the Zoning Board of Adjustment and the applicants to the Zoning Board of Adjustment to have a clear understanding of what the law is. It's printed in black and white in the zoning ordinance. We do this in a number of other instances in the zoning ordinance where we take existing state law and we put it in the ordinance so that it's easy to find. And the other reason is that it brings the zoning ordinance up to the current state of the law. As I said, this practice is already going on, these laws already exist, and we want the zoning ordinance to reflect that. So that's the purpose behind these proposed amendments, and that's why the Planning Department, the Solicitor's Office, and our outside counsel are all recommending that you adopt these proposed amendments. So that's just a brief presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'll stop there for now.
Chairman Terry, or Alderman Terrio.
Thank you, Your Honor. Jeff, a couple questions. So we heard this in committee, and maybe I was confused. So you're saying that we're adopting federal and state law?
I'm saying that we're taking language from federal and state law and putting it into the Manchester zoning ordinance.
Yes, but I want to, and maybe I misunderstood.
Yep.
So let me just read this. We're now adding an individual that is in recovery from chemical dependency.
Yes.
So you're saying that federal law and state law have already defined a disability as somebody who, so that's codified in federal and state law, that somebody who's in recovery from chemical dependency, so we're taking the exact words and verbiage.
Yeah, so let me be clear on that. There have been a couple of amendments to the definitions section, well, one to the definition section, one to the process section, that are slightly different from state law, from state in one instance and federal in another. So there have been a few changes, and that provision that you just identified is the one change on the federal side. That is not a legally significant change in that federal courts have all recognized, and the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act recognize that mental impairments, mental disabilities are treated as a disability under the definition in federal law, just as physical disabilities are. And an addiction to a controlled substance or addiction to alcohol is considered a disability under the case law. So federal law does recognize chemical dependency as a disability.
Follow up. So just to clarify, it sounds to me like you're saying it's not necessarily federal law, but it's in the case law. So just
It's federal cases.
Yes, but has federal law codified this language? I'm not talking about case law, I understand that. Has federal law codified this language?
There is not a direct reference to chemical dependency in the ADA and the FHA, but it is absolutely clear in the case law, as our outside counsel has advised us. I believe in the non-public session we had, I believe they mentioned that.
So in what, because there's different federal jurisdictions, some of them where, we don't have to follow, it's not mandatory. Do you know which federal jurisdiction?
I know that there have been a number of them that have. I don't know if it's this one. What I can tell you is that I've been advised that whether that language is there or not, the addiction to a controlled substance is protected as a disability. So if this board were interested in striking that language, it would not have any practical effect on this ordinance.
All right, and final question. Has the city of Manchester been sued because we don't have this language currently in our ordinances?
Alderman, as you're aware, the city of Manchester is involved in multiple federal cases regarding sober houses. Whether it is about that particular provision, I don't think we should get into, and honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know. But if we were going to get into the particulars of litigation, I would recommend non-public session for that.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Chairman Lavasser, did you have?
This is a big leap because you already said everything is already codified and we have to follow it anyway, yet you're here before this board asking for a vote, which I don't understand why we have to take the vote. If it's codified and blah, 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 it's the rule of the land of the law. Boise is a federal case, and probably 90% of this country doesn't follow that. They don't have an ordinance in there. And only, of course, Manchester decided to put it in, but not another town or city in this state has codified it or put it in their ordinances. So I don't really have obviously disability. We have now, I don't know, you say it's federal law, but it's not, it's case law. And they're asking us to, a city or a state. The state hasn't codified it. You say it's part of the federal and state law. I don't know if it's codified in an RSA as far as
Yes.
the particular issue of chemical dependency being a disability.
No, to be clear, if you look at your packet and the ordinance language, there's the top language that is bolded, the definition of disability. That comes from federal law.
Yeah.
The bottom language that is bolded, which is the process side of it, comes from state law.
Right, and we're adding that in the city. I don't know why that doesn't violate our the 10th Amendment rights. There's nothing, unless all of a sudden the federal government decided that they were going to overtake every single housing issue, ZBA issue, planning board issue from towns and cities and the state. I don't know if this has been challenged anywhere. Boise hasn't been challenged for how many years? It wasn't challenged for at least a decade, maybe more, and now it's finally being challenged. So you're asking us to, and again, I don't know this to be a fact, but I'm assuming the reason why you want this extra language added in is for the sober homes to protect us from lawsuits. But
Correct.
I don't want to jump the shark. I don't know where the AMA studies are. I don't know which doctors were made a decision that chemical dependency is enough to be able to say, I have a chemical, one person just has to have a chemical dependency to be considered disabled to be able to turn 3-family buildings, or at least cut it from 5 down to 4 criteria instead of 5. To me, I understand the disability issue of it. We all know what ADA has done and how it's changed buildings and streets, et cetera. But this particular addition on a chemical dependency is really is just a bridge too far. And I don't know why I know why we're the ones that are getting pushed to do it, because we're the dumping ground. We're the place that everybody has to come with every single social issue, because supposedly we have hospitals and we have buses here. So they keep dumping all this stuff in our city, and our city's sick of it. So you're telling us that we have to do this, but I don't think we have to add the extra language in on the chemical dependency issue.
Could I?
Maybe I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
I don't want to, that's for sure.
So if I could just briefly respond, let me first say, I'm not telling you have to add that. If you want to strike that language, I don't think that's going to have much of an effect. That's something we want to talk with our outside counsel about. As you know, they came and talked to us. They walked through the issues in the litigation, which I don't want to get into detail here in public session. But they are the ones who are litigating these. They are the ones who are very much into the details of this. So we could have them back again if you'd like, and we could table this and continue it. But my understanding is that that language and the amendment the change to the state law language that's in the bottom section were both made to put the city in a better position should future litigation occur. So it's putting us in a better position if something else happens. That's why that language was changed. And I can explain the amendment to the state law language if you'd like. But that's the intent. If you want to, again, press pause.
We're always the first place in the whole state to add that extra language in. Is there really, literally, Nashua has actually codified chemical dependency as a disability?
I would need to look at Nashua's language. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay. Is this something that has to be done right away as far as a vote?
No.
There's no rush to get this under tonight.
I think, again, I don't want to get into too much of the litigation part of this, but I think it would be advantageous. But again, we can certainly pause and have our outside counsel back again and talk more about litigation strategy beyond what we've already discussed.
If I may, we did hear from counsel. Counsel gave us a very good explanation of it, but it, doesn't mean that we have to agree with it.
I agree.
Federal, is there an actual case that you could point to or send us a link for the actual position that chemical dependency is a disability? Is there an actual case on that particular issue, or just, we already know the disability language is something that the feds would probably obviously have power over the states and municipalities, but the particular issue of now reducing the criterion down to 4 because of this particular add-on, is there a case law on that particular point?
So the reduction of 5 down to 4 is a New Hampshire specific issue because that's from state law. So I don't know that there's a First Circuit or New Hampshire, district court case directly on that issue.
Or even a state case?
This would generally be removed to federal court, I think, because it's a federal law issue. So I doubt there's a state case on it. But again, I'm not the lawyer doing the litigation, so I wouldn't be the one to really ask that, frankly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alderman Vincent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we have to have.
Jeff, thanks for coming. If I may, one of the statements in here that we're adding in the first portion says including being in recovery from chemical dependency. Just for clarity, what would constitute recovery in that case?
Sure. It would be not currently addicted to a controlled substance, but having in the past, not currently using a controlled substance, but currently being addicted to a controlled substance. That is in recovery.
So one day.
You
see why I'm asking?
I do.
It's an open. I think it just opens a book for. It's not clear. And I get it, but again, and it says, it follows that by saying a record of such an impairment. Well, what constitutes a record? Is it something from an institution or some kind of documentation from a hospital or something like that?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to get that deep, or maybe I'm getting too deep, but again, it raises a question because we're adding these words to something, and I just want to make sure that when people look at it, because we're trying to bring clarity, and I don't think maybe
Sure.
you can help me understand that.
Sure. So as far as B, a record of such impairment, that is verbatim from the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's not anything that was added.
Okay.
And I think, that is I think it would mean any record, meaning any kind of record from a court, any record from a prior, place where someone was receiving treatment or something like that, any record that would indicate that that person is in recovery. That cannot be used against that person to prevent that person from doing something like rent an apartment or apply for a job or, have access to a piece of property that they would otherwise be able to get, but they can't because of a certain zoning restriction.
Okay, if I may have one more.
Please.
Mr. Mayor. So tonight, we're voting on verbiage. So if we said no and we push this back, just to be clear, we're still following under the federal statute, so.
Yes, whether you adopt this ordinance or not does not change the process that the Zoning Board of Adjustment has to follow.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Alderman Barry.
Thank you, Your Honor. So Jeff, just to be clear, you're in favor of it, right? Us passing it?
Yes, I am the solicitor's office, our outside counsel, we all believe that this is an appropriate measure for you to pass.
Do you think, I know what my answer is, but do you think that if we delay this and have them come back, we're going to hear something different than what we already?
I'm sorry, have the outside counsel come back?
Right.
I don't want to speak for them, but I highly doubt it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Chairman Lavasser.
Brought up something interesting. I'm not sure if I misheard this, but you said when renting an apartment, this is a zoning ordinance that you're talking about, not a landlord-tenant zoning ordinance. So you're saying that, well, okay.
You want me to
I
just?
can't discriminate on somebody based on disability, right?
Correct.
All right. And so if we add this extra language in creating a disability that is, you say, well, hasn't been codified, but a chemical dependency, so if somebody comes to rent an apartment from me and I see track marks all up and down their arm, I assume that they're probably an addict or whatever. I'm not saying me personally, but a landlord looks at that and then they cannot now discriminate on the fact that the person's probably a drug addict with needles. If we add that language in, does that change the way the definition? So currently, a landlord can discriminate based on whether somebody is a drug addict, or no, they can't.
So I'm not an expert
But that's
landlord
what
tenant.
you brought that up with the landlord thing. That's
Yep.
why it's raising a flag. for me.
Sure. So I brought that up along with like applying for a job and a few other examples I gave. The Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act cover a broad range of topics, including FHA applies to rental of property. That's not what the zoning ordinance does. I was saying that in response to the Alderman's question just about, what the record of such impairment is. If someone is in a situation like renting an apartment and their landlord's looking at their history or whatever, and they see something they don't like because they think the person may have been, addicted to a controlled substance, the Fair Housing Act is set up to prevent that sort of a decision from happening. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is zoning, just, it's really our definition of family in the zoning ordinance. That is what would that's what almost all, although not all, but most sober homes apply for a variance from, is that cap of 4 people unrelated in our definition of family.
So you're saying that we can vote for this, but we can cut out the part of the definition of a person who's got an addiction issue.
I'm saying that I believe that doesn't have much of an effect. I believe that was inserted in there to put the city in a better position in the future should litigation be brought against the city. It creates an awareness that the city is not attempting to discriminate based on one of the protected categories under the ADA and the FHA, which are addiction to a controlled substance. It's flagging that, saying we are not engaging in such discrimination, and therefore puts us in a better defensive position going forward.
But the zoning board, when they're actually voting on a sober home, already knows that people that are going into the sober home have an addiction issue.
Correct.
So there's an assumption that if the zoning board doesn't want to vote for a sober home, it's because the people that are going in there are addicted.
So the litigation happens.
I think most of these places are actually being approved because people have an addiction.
Well, some have not been, and that
I mean,
has
has
led to
somebody
litigation.
actually on the zoning board use language that says, I'm not voting for this because I don't want addicts living in a house next to mine?
Well, I think there's the litigation that is brought alleging discrimination based on people being in that protected class. Whether that's accurate or not is an open question, but that is the allegation that litigants bring against the city.
And where was the determining factor that they're a protected class?
That is the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act.
All right, so that's under an act. It's not been case law yet. Just that's actually been codified.
There is case law. I would need to refer back to the language to see for sure whether or not it says addiction to a controlled substance. It's in there somewhere. I don't know that that's part of the definition, but that is, case law has been clear on that, is my understanding, that this is absolutely, I believe that our outside counsel said that directly. And I know they've said that to me. That is absolutely true.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, Alderman Sapienza, followed by Alderman Long. Alderman Goonan.
I have a couple questions, if I may. Are we removing any barriers to creating a sober home by voting for this?
No, in that these laws already exist, and the city of Manchester adopting this language, just sticking it in the ordinance, doesn't change the state of the law in New Hampshire.
Will we have to approve any sober homes after we pass this that we would not have had to approve prior to passing this?
I believe the answer to your question is no, because again, the state of the law isn't changing as a result of us adopting this language. I'm sorry, the city adopting this language.
Thank you. You're making it pretty clear to me. And this language is supported by the outside counsel who's actually working on court cases for us right now.
Correct.
And we're not making it easier to create sober homes.
Nothing is practically changing as a result of this.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Alderman Long.
Thank you, Your Honor. With respect to, has the state codified chemical dependency, has a, in recovery, has a disability?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that it is not stated in the reasonable accommodation statute that we're bringing into our ordinance here. It may be out there somewhere in state law that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, and I don't see the assessor here. I wonder, does this increase disability exemptions?
That would be
The
an
assessor
assessing
may
question.
know that, but I don't see him here. Those are my two questions.
Alderman
And somebody, one day recovery, it's a good day. Thank you.
Alderman Goonan.
Thank you. I think the outside counsel that we heard from was pretty clear. I know I've spoke to you and you were, all for it. Our solicitor's office is all for it. Our planning director, to me, it doesn't make sense to bat this around as a board when we have the experts here telling us that we're in a lot better position for some lawsuits that we're going through right now. I just think we should support this and stop kicking it around. And I think, and I'm not going to speak for the mayor, but, we have kind of talked about this in the past, and my guess is that he's in favor of this also, as well as the other changes. But I don't think we'd be sitting here if he wasn't.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there anyone? Yes, Alderman Cantor.
So can you define recovery? I guess I'm just really having a hard time with the recovery, dependency.
Sure. Addiction to a controlled substance, like a current medically diagnosed addiction, would be synonymous with recovery.
And who decides this?
That's just the case law has decided that is a a disability, and I use quotes because that's a defined term in the Americans with Disabilities Act. It falls under disability. So that is what that means.
Alderman Sapienza? Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Briefly, to put it plain, I guess I should say I'm not a lawyer, but to put it plain, it seems like we're adding restrictions to ourselves. We have a lot of restrictions placed upon us by the federal government, by the state government, and we're going to go ahead here and add restrictions voluntarily to preempt some lawsuit that's possible in the future. I just think we have enough restrictions as is. I hope we don't fall into the habit of adding restrictions and mandates and whatnot ourselves. There are enough out there from the federal government and from the state government. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Director, so these are just parts of the larger changes to our zoning ordinances, correct? So are we?
Yes, we have the zoning ordinance is like 170 pages, and this is just little parts to it. Yep.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed zoning ordinance change?
We have no one signed up wishing to speak in favor. There is one person wishing to speak in opposition, Rich Gerard.
Is this on? Yes. Mr. Mayor, members of the board, for the record, my name is Richard Gerard and I live at 283 Orange Street. Before I get to my prepared remarks, there is actually a First Circuit Court of Appeals case on this question. The city of Fitchburg actually won. It was told that enforcing its codes was not discriminating against people who had disabilities. I will forward it to the board after the meeting. In the planning director's November 13, 2023 letter to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, Mr. Belanger wrote that the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act, quote, require municipalities to make reasonable accommodations to their rules, policies, or practices when such accommodations are necessary to afford persons with disabilities an equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling. After asserting that the proposed alterations of the zoning ordinance change nothing because they're prescribed in state and federal law, Belanger writes, quote, one example of a situation in which the adopted provisions would apply would be for a person who uses a wheelchair. If the person needed to install a ramp to access their house and the only suitable location for a ramp would be within the setback, the person could apply to the ZBA for the variance. The ZBA would only require the applicant to meet 4 variance criterion rather than 5, thus making it easier to receive the variance and granting a reasonable accommodation from the usual rules. Well, that makes sense and is certainly, quote, in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance, which is required by state law. He goes on to equate a person who needs a wheelchair ramp to access their home with sober living facilities. This is like saying that because there's a bike lane on a road, a trucking company can open up shop anywhere along that road. It's absurd on its face. The considerations that come with accommodating an individual's ability to live in a residential property are very, very different from those involved with allowing a high-intensity business use in residential zones that don't allow the use. Manchester's zoning ordinance does make accommodations for those businesses that wish to serve those in recovery. It provides for congregate housing, which is defined as, quote, multifamily or other dwelling units serving individuals who require on-site services that support independent living, including, at a minimum, communal dining facilities. Congregate housing may be characterized by on-site personal care services, housekeeping and linen service, and the supervision of self-administered medication, but excluding 24-hour nursing care. At its core, a sober living facility is congregate housing,
30
and they're
seconds.
allowed in 8 of the city's 16 zoning districts, including the R3, C1, and C2 by right, and the B2, RDV, CBD, AMX, and RSM districts with a conditional use permit from the planning board. This makes sense given that these sober living operations are businesses. They accept insurance payments for their clients, experience constant turnover, provide on-site services, often including transportation to off-site services, and have shared dining and laundry facilities. In short, the city allows this use in business zones and in residential zones with
3
characteristics
minutes.
to better enable their operation. It disallows these operations in areas where they'd be disruptive to surrounding properties, which is how it should be. Please vote no.
All those wishing to speak have been heard. The testimony presented will be taken under advisement with reports to be made to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen at a later date. This being a special meeting of the Board, no further business can be presented. Is there a motion to adjourn? Alderman O'Neill, seconded by Alderman Sapienza. All those in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it.
All set?
Hey, look at that, 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
All right, no rest for the weary.
All right.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Morgan? Alderman Goonan? Alderman Long?
Here.
Alderman Fajardo?
Here.
Alderman Tony Sapienza? Here. Alderman Cantor?
Here.
Alderman O'Neill?
Here.
Alderman Lavasser? Here. Alderman Terrio?
Here.
Alderman Ed Sapienza?
Here.
Alderman Burkish?
Here.
Alderman Berry? Here. Alderman Vincent?
Here.
Alderman Thomas?
Here.
All present, Your Honor.
Okay. The purpose of the public comment session is to give residents of Manchester the opportunity to address the board. All people wishing to speak will have up to 3 minutes to do so, and any comments must be directed to the chair. Any resident wishing to speak will come forward to the nearest microphone, clearly state their name and address when recognized, and give their comments.
Just waiting on the list.
Okay.
Venya Stalcup, followed by Matthew Perzik. Venya Stalcup. Followed by Matthew Perzik.
Good evening. I'm Venya Stalcup, a representative of the New Hampshire Congress of Workers' Organizations, calling for an immediate ceasefire and the end of the Israeli siege of Gaza. Every 10 minutes, a child is killed in Gaza, according to the World Health Organization. Each day, 565 homes are destroyed. Meanwhile, Israel has severely intensified their blockade of Gaza, cutting all water, food supplies, and electricity. I use the word intensified because this blockade has been in effect for the past 18 years, providing just enough supplies to keep the population above starvation. As unemployment rose to 60%, the situation in Gaza has been dire, but now it is catastrophic. Beyond the deaths directly resulting from Israeli bombardment and invasion, thousands more are dying from disease and starvation, with 90% of Gazans without access to safe drinking water, 25% of households facing lethal starvation, and none of their 26 hospitals fully functioning. According to the Associated Press, the devastation has been worse than the razing of Aleppo in Syria or Russia's bombing of Mariupol, while Arif Hussein, chief economist of the World Food Program, said, "I've been to all kinds of conflicts, and for me, this is the most unprecedented I have seen." He went on to say there are about 700,000 people in the world facing catastrophic hunger. 577,000 of them are in Gaza. The Zionist apartheid government of Israel is aware of the terror they are inflicting on the population of Gaza. In fact, terror and annihilation are their express intent. Zionist ministers, military command spokespeople, and Benjamin Netanyahu have made numerous comments and declarations expressly declaring their intent for the extermination of Gaza. Israeli Minister of Parliament Collard said, right now, one goal, Nakba, a Nakba that will overshadow the Nakba of 48, a Nakba in Gaza, and a Nakba for anyone who dares to join them. Of course, referring to the Nakba of 1948, when Zionist militias and the new Israeli army forcefully expelled 1 million Palestinians from their homes, amounting to about 75% of the Palestinian population at the time. Chief Coordinator of Government Activities in the Territories, Major General Elaine, says that they are human animals who must be treated as such. There will be no electricity and no water. There will be only destruction. You wanted hell and you will get hell, end quote. Israeli Minister of Parliament Gottlieb says It's time to launch missiles with no restrictions. Gaza is to be trampled and destroyed, end quote. Defense Minister Gallant says,
30 seconds.
Gaza won't return to what it was before. We'll eliminate everything. These are the words of an administration bent on genocide and on an unending siege of Gaza. And we ask for you to consider the resolution we present to you this evening.
Matthew Perzik, followed by Sebastian Rowan.
I'm Matt Pejic, resident of Manchester, Ward 6, here as chairman of the New Hampshire Congress of Workers' Organizations, calling for an immediate ceasefire and an end to the Israeli siege of Gaza. Continuing from what my colleague Venya was saying, Israel has made it a point to target hospitals, ambulances, bakeries, as well as journalists and their families. A reporter from Al Jazeera, Wael Daldo, lost his wife, son, daughter, and grandson to an Israeli airstrike after he had moved his family from North Gaza to the Nuseirat refugee camp in the south, where Israel claimed would be a safe zone from the carnage. Al Jazeera reporter Mohammed al-Sharafi lost 22 members of his life when Israel executed an airstrike on the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. Several were children. These are just a couple instances out of many. All the while, Israel has allowed little to no humanitarian aid into Gaza, only recently capping out at 200 trucks a day, which is not nearly enough to support the sheer number of Gazans in need. Israel went so far as to airstrike Gaza's southern border with Egypt very early in the siege, precisely to destroy the critical infrastructure needed for the flow of aid. Less than a couple weeks ago, Israeli tanks shelled a vocational center housing 30,000 refugees in Khan Yunis, the principal city of southern Gaza, killing and maiming scores of Palestinians. Many recognize Gaza as the world's largest open-air prison, including conservative former Prime Minister of the UK, David Cameron. Some even calling it one of history's largest concentration camps, including Dr. Norman Finkelstein, one of the world's most prominent experts on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Nearly all Gazan utilities were already under Israel's control. You could not enter or leave Gaza without a permit, which was very seldomly granted by Israel. If you tried to escape by the sea, you ran the risk of being arrested by the Israeli or Egyptian navies or sinking into the ocean on improvised boats. The humanitarian organization Save the Children has reported that 80% of minors in Gaza suffer from depression, with over half having seriously considered suicide in the past few years. And as mentioned before, Gaza has been under an Israeli blockade for 18 years. The hypocrisy of Zionists accusing anti-Zionist, anti-apartheid, anti-genocide voices of being Nazis when they themselves are blatantly repeating the actions of the German Reich. For what is the occupation of the West Bank and the siege of Gaza but the attempted enactment of Lebensraum, living space for the Zionist state? All the while, Israel, unprovoked, strikes Syria, Lebanon, and other countries in the Middle East, causing severe rises in tensions in the region, which could balloon into a wider conflict, perhaps even a third world war. So long as the United States continues to support the siege and the genocide and stall serious diplomatic intervention, the world may very well end in a nuclear inferno and fascism will have the last laugh. Ceasefire now and end the siege. Thank you.
Sebastian Rowan, followed by Matei Alexandro.
Good evening. My name is Sebastian Rowan, resident of Manchester Ward 2, and I'm here tonight to support the call for an immediate ceasefire, an end to the Israeli siege of Gaza, and the release of all hostages and political prisoners held by both sides. During the October 7th attacks on Israel, approximately 250 people were abducted by Hamas and other Palestinian militant groups, and 136 remain captive in Gaza to this day. I believe everyone in this room wants to see all of the remaining hostages returned safely back to their families. A ceasefire is the only way to achieve this end. Israel's indiscriminate bombing has destroyed more than 70% of homes and nearly every healthcare facility in Gaza. Israel continues to deny the entry of humanitarian aid, including food and medicine, into Gaza, with the number of trucks entering daily being less than 16% of the number from before October 7th. It's believed that the hostages are being held in underground tunnels. And last week, the IDF confirmed that they're flooding these tunnels with seawater. Israel claims that everything they're doing is in the name of rescuing the hostages, but this is blatantly false. Everything Israel is doing in Gaza is making the hostages less safe. In December, the IDF admitted that its forces killed 3 hostages who had managed to escape their captors. They were shirtless and waving a white flag. Hamas has stated on multiple occasions that they will release the hostages in a prisoner exchange if Israel commits to a ceasefire. According to the Adamir Prisoner Support and Human Rights Association, Israel holds 9,000 Palestinians captive as political prisoners, including 200 children. The Israeli military prosecutes 700 Palestinian children every year, some as young as 12 years old. Throwing stones is the most common charge against children, which carries a sentence of up to 20 years under Israeli military law. More than a third of Palestinian prisoners are held in what Israel calls administrative detention, which allows Israeli occupation forces to hold prisoners indefinitely on secret information without charging them or allowing them to stand trial. No Palestinian accused of a crime by Israel is given a fair trial. Rather, they're tried in Israeli military courts where anti-Palestinian discrimination is codified into law
30
and
seconds.
where 95% of cases result in conviction. Reports of torture in Israeli prisons are pervasive. The international community, human rights groups, and many of the families of the hostages have joined the call for an immediate ceasefire and the release of hostages and prisoners held by both sides. In the name of peace, Manchester must do the same. Ceasefire now. Release the hostages.
Matei Alexandro, followed by Bradley Conway.
Good evening. I'm Matei Alexandru of the New Hampshire Workers' Congress, or the New Hampshire Congress of Workers' Organizations. The unfathomable number of dead on one of the sides, the unimaginable level of destruction, the way militant cells and people were regarded as targets and not as human beings, that's something that troubles me. This is testimony from an IDF soldier after Operation Protective Edge. Operation Protective Edge was the official name given by Israel to the 2014 war in Gaza. Then, 67 IDF soldiers and 6 Israeli civilians were killed, compared to 2,310 Palestinian civilians killed and 10,626 wounded, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. 75 years of occupation has shown that there is no possibility for enduring peace without holding Israel to the standards of international law. This includes ending the blockade of the Gazan coast, the withdrawal of the IDF from Gaza and the West Bank, Palestinian control over public utilities in Gaza, rights of travel and return for Palestinians, deoccupation of the West Bank, and prosecution of settlers. The current conflict is framed as a war, but no conflict between such unequally armed and prepared sides is truly war. Israel is a nuclear-armed state. It is U.S.-backed and internationally recognized. Palestine shares none of these advantages. The country is not even a fully enfranchised member of the United Nations, unlike Israel. Israel claims to be fighting for self-defense, but has repeatedly targeted and been caught lying about targeting civilians, entire regions in indiscriminate bombing campaigns, hospitals, universities, refugee camps, and targeted the journalists attempting to report them, in some instances targeting their entire families along. None of these are considered viable military targets, and attacking them constitutes war crimes. Some of these are currently under investigation at the international level. Despite posturing as the global defensive force for Jewish people, Israel's unrestrained violence in the name of Jews everywhere, despite many Jewish people not supporting the Zionist project, makes Jews in Israel and around the world the targets of reactionary anti-Semitism. A constant use of violence and repression over Palestinians will never accomplish peace for Israelis. Israel's unrestrained bombing has undoubtedly harmed captured Israelis in Gaza, and IDF soldiers even killed unarmed escaping hostages in their total commitment to this destruction.
30 seconds.
The occupation hurts Palestinians living under its boot, Jews around the world who are wrongly associated with apartheid and genocide, and it hurts Americans, Jewish citizens and non-Jewish citizens alike, whose government forces its own people to endure in a crumbling country as it sends billions of sorely needed dollars to the Israeli government. Zionism has no rewards. Occupation has no rewards. Thank you.
Bradley Conway, followed by Madeline Jones.
Hello, everybody. Hi, everyone. My name is Bradley Conway. I live here in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I've been helping to bring the ceasefire resolution to the BMA. I've spoken to some of you aldermen on the phone, so you may recognize my voice. We're all out here today because we want the city to take a stand for life-affirming values, period. In the spirit of promoting life-affirming values, we're here today not only to call on the BMA to adopt a resolution in support of ceasefire, but also to demand that the city call for an end to U.S. military aid to Israel, for a release of all prisoners and hostages on both sides, and to call for the city to proactively identify and divest from investments it makes which are detrimental to life. If there is any way for the City of Manchester to use its influence to promote de-escalation and ceasefire, be that through its financial investments, via resolution or otherwise, we want to see the city actively pursuing those avenues. Myself and a few others here tonight have been regularly standing on Elm Street, Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 p.m. with a big sign that says, "Ceasefire now." Through this experience, I can report confidently that there are generally three types of people in Manchester: those who support ceasefire, those who are silent, and those who really want Israel to continue its indiscriminate bombardment and starvation of Palestinians. The City of Manchester should take immediate steps to distance itself from the brutality of Israeli foreign policy by asserting that all life is equally precious, with the sincere intention of discouraging anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, and anti-Palestinian racism in Manchester. Let us all say in unison that without exception, killing innocent people is unacceptable. Bombing healthcare facilities is unacceptable. Starving people is unacceptable. Displacing millions from their homes, shooting people waving white flags, and violating international law is unacceptable. The U.S.-funded genocide of Gaza is unacceptable. Manchester, New Hampshire demands a ceasefire now. But it's not just Manchester, New Hampshire. Cities across the country are passing ceasefire resolutions, most notably Portland, Maine, Somerville, Cambridge, Providence, Chicago, Minneapolis, San Francisco, and the list goes on. I want to highlight these cities because I want to show that there's plenty of precedent for the resolution we're presenting today. Our next speaker will be reading the proposed resolution, and I encourage the mayor and the aldermen to think of what kinds of questions they might like to ask, because we really hope to get a ceasefire resolution on the next agenda for the BMA meeting.
30 seconds.
Keep in mind that the resolution we'll be reading you today is a draft, and we look forward to working with you all to iron out the details to find something agreeable to everyone. With that, I'd like to submit some materials for distribution to the mayor and aldermen. Thank you very much.
I will walk by so you can do that.
Okay.
Madeline Jones, followed by Katie LaBranch.
Good evening to all of you. My name is Madeline Jones. I'm a second-generation Palestinian American, and I've been living in Manchester for 13 years. I come here today to read to you the resolution that we have drafted as your constituents for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and Israel. Whereas the Manchester Board of Mayor and Aldermen recognizes that all human life is precious, regardless of race, religion, or nationality, and whereas since the Hamas attacks of October 7th, 2023, in which over 1,200 Israelis were killed and more than 240 taken hostage, Israel has engaged in a disproportionate and indiscriminate military campaign in Gaza, which has, in just over 116 days, killed over 26,000 Palestinians, 70% of whom are women and children. And whereas the Israeli military campaign of bombardment, siege, and invasion in Gaza has resulted in the displacement of more than 85% of Gaza's 2.2 million inhabitants, destroyed more than 70% of homes, and severely damaged nearly every healthcare facility in Gaza. And whereas Israel's military's campaign of bombardment, siege, and invasion in Gaza is funded in large part by U.S. taxes in the form of unconditional military aid packages. And whereas rendering Gaza uninhabitable may likely amount to collective punishment under Article 33 of the Fourth Geneva Convention and to genocide under the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. And whereas residents of the city of Manchester refuse to be complicit in Israel's campaign of destruction in Gaza through the city's continued partnerships and investments. Whereas the City of Manchester's federal representative delegation, led by Chris Pappas, Maggie Hassan, and Jean Shaheen, has failed to represent the urgent humanitarian and diplomatic interests of residents of the City of Manchester and the state of New Hampshire. Therefore, be it resolved that the Manchester Board of Mayor and Aldermen joins with representatives of other U.S. cities in calling on our President and our federal representative delegation to demand an immediate and enduring ceasefire.
30 seconds.
The provision of life-saving humanitarian aid in Gaza, the release of all hostages, detainees, and political prisoners on both sides, and be it further resolved that the Manchester Board of Mayor and Aldermen joins with representatives of other U.S. cities in calling on our President and our federal representative delegation to demand an end to U.S. military aid packages and all arms distribution to Israel, and be it further resolved that the Manchester Board of Mayor and Aldermen shall establish a committee to identify, divest from, and prevent business with all entities involved in the U.S.-Israeli military-industrial complex. Thank you.
Katie LaBranche, followed by Maria Denola.
Hello, everyone. Katie LaBranche, 443 North Bay Street here in Manchester. Good evening. I'm here tonight because I know we all have a shared goal to have the students of Manchester perform well in school so they're able to lead healthy and productive lives, hopefully right here in our city. I know it's possible for this board to collaborate with the Board of School Committee in the facilities effort because it's what is best for our city. I relocated to Manchester with my family almost 10 years ago. And over that time, I've been lucky to teach at Wilson and Webster schools as a reading specialist, as well as chair the Manchester Proud Council. During our time here, our children who are now 10 and 12 had high-level educators, exceptional learning experiences in our school system. I do wish I could say the same about the buildings they learn in. I will say I've been able to witness firsthand the efforts of Dr. Gillis and her team. They've improved our course catalog. They've aligned curriculum, launched vertical programming rooted in the science of reading, along with professional development on those programs. They have identified and lifted opportunities for student supports. They have improved systems outside of the classroom walls, and all of these efforts have been closely aligned to the district's strategic plan. Some highlights of these efforts include our overall student attendance growing by 9% due to the We Show Up campaign. In addition to that, our mid-year iReady diagnostic assessments show an increase of students working on or above grade level. For these efforts to be most effective and to achieve the outcomes we want for all of our students, we must provide 21st century learning environments that enable and inspire learning. Nearly all of our surrounding communities, including Nashua and Concord, have dedicated themselves to providing modernized schools. It is time that we provide these facility improvements coupled with our standing curriculum, systems, and supports to achieve excellence for all of our students. There's a long-standing tradition of pride in Manchester. We owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our future generations to maintain these traditions. My hope is that this board and all of our elected officials will lead us to an era of rational, respectful, informed, and factual discourse and decision-making that results in extraordinary opportunities for the students in the public schools of Manchester. Thank you.
Maria Denola, followed by David Rogers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Denola. I live in Ward 1. I'm a proud graduate of Manchester High School West, a teacher here in Manchester for 17 years, including Webster Elementary, Hillside Middle, Southside Middle, and Manchester Memorial High School, followed by 16 years as a school administrator for SAU 55. Last year, I retired as a middle school principal of Hampstead Middle School. During my 32 years in education, I know that providing modern school facilities has a powerful and positive impact on student achievement and the retention of staff members. Investing in schools contributes to the community's economic development by attracting businesses and keeping families here. The long-term benefits of improved education outcomes create a more skilled workforce. The current state of our aging, deteriorating buildings does not support the vision of 21st century learning. To imagine our youngest students daily in overcrowded classrooms, cafeterias, and gymnasiums is disgraceful. Our current crowded classrooms limit student access to their teachers, for individual attention, and for making meaningful interactions with their peers. Overcrowding increases discipline issues due to lack of comfort and flexibility and impacts the overall morale of the school community. This specific issue heightens stress levels not only for our students' learning experiences, but also teacher morale and job satisfaction. Placing a pause on a well-researched and comprehensive plan developed by educational experts is reprehensible. The details of Phase 1 have been publicly available for review for months now to the public and city governance. Acting as a responsible city leader, this should have been reviewed and ultimately was your homework. Your homework is late. Read up, do the right thing, and support our community's children with the care and respect they deserve. Thank you for this opportunity to address you this evening.
David Rogers, followed by Aaron Kerwin.
Hello, my name is David Rogers. I live in Concord, New Hampshire, and I work at DECA. And it's an honor to be here with you tonight. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Manchester School District and Manchester Proud, where I serve as one of the board members. One of the things that we're really excited about for our city is the potential for job growth and creation that's being driven by our innovation ecosystem here in the city. Like nowhere else in the world, we have an opportunity to build a new industry based around AI, automation, and the very unique field of tissue engineering. The federal government saw fit to bestow our city with a large grant to help anchor this industry here. And over the next 5 to 10 years, we could see this industry grow to bring thousands of jobs to the cities of Manchester. And the reason why we want to support the Manchester School District and we take the time to serve on Manchester Proud and other organizations is because we don't want to just simply import those jobs from other parts of the country and other parts of the world. We want our students to be the ones to step up and take those jobs. And think about how great of a story that is to build a 21st century ecosystem around new technologies that are being pioneered in our cities and to, at the same time, create a pipeline that's going to allow our students to step up into those jobs. And I know that everybody has thoughts on how to accomplish that, but I want to kind of set the table to consider the vision of what our city could accomplish if we could bring those two streams together. And I know that means more than buildings, and I know that there's lots of opinions on how to achieve and accomplish that, but think about the opportunity that sits before us. Every student from our Manchester School District that can step up into one of those jobs is a tremendous success story for our city. And so I'd love the opportunity for us all to work together to find out how to tell that story. So thank you.
Aaron Kerwin, followed by Rich Gerard.
Hello, my name is Erin Kerwin, and I live at 291 Race Street. I'm here today to voice my support of the school board's plan for Phase 1 of the district. I believe that having a good school system is the backbone to our community. I implore you to take tours of the school, and you will see with your own eyes why Phase 1 is so important. I'd also like to point out that in the last election, while the makeup of this board changed, the makeup of the school board did stay the same. This is the voters expressing that they are happy with what the school board is doing and the direction in which they are taking the district. I also want to take a moment to express my concerns about some of the communications that have come from this board. After the last meeting, I took the time to write to my representatives on this board a message expressing my support of Phase 1. I did not hear back from my own representative, but I did get a response back from a member of this board that was shocking. The tone and content of their reply to my message was bullying, demeaning, and inaccurate, and did not open up an avenue for any constructive conversation. I was appalled that an elected official would respond to a constituent this way. I do appreciate all of you being here and working hard to keep this city running. It is a thankless job that I am not signing up for, but I do hope that there is an expectation of treating each other and your constituents with respect. Thank you.
Rich Gerard, followed by Ariel Moore.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, for the record, my name is Richard Gerard, and I live at 283 Orange Street. Recently, the Zoning Board of Adjustment granted a variance for the operation of a sober facility on Holt Ave, despite the unanimous opposition of dozens of neighbors. Without commenting on the totally inappropriate manner in which the meeting was conducted, the board was at a stalemate until Chan Air Ketterer pressured board member Joe Prito into agreeing that a variance was in the public interest. Prito had previously said the testifying public clearly didn't think it was in their interest to have a 20-bed facility with clinical services operating in their neighborhood. Ketterer countered that he had to think about the benefit to the whole city of Manchester and, in fact, the entire state of New Hampshire. He caved, and the variance was granted on a 3-2 vote. That maneuver sent a message that threatens every neighborhood in Manchester, and that is this: regardless of how negative the impact may be on your neighborhood, you must suffer for the greater good of the city and the state. If you approve the zoning changes that's on tonight's agenda, you will send the same message to neighbors across the city, as it will undercut the zoning ordinance by opening our city's neighborhoods to the kind of business use that will have seriously negative impacts on their quality of life and property values. These changes will push the zoning board to make more such determinations of what is allegedly in the public interest. Currently, the city allows this use, sober homes, in the R3, C1, and C2 districts by right, and the B2, RDV, CBD, AMX, and RSM districts with a conditional use permit from the planning board. That means half the city's zoning districts allow this use. The city does broadly accommodate this use, so what purpose is served by opening every residential zone to this incompatible business use? The city's zoning ordinance makes sense. These sober operations are businesses. They accept insurance payments for their clients, experience constant turnover, provide on-site services, often including transportation to off-site services, and have shared dining and laundry facilities. Something else to consider is how the 2021 change to the definition of family in the zoning ordinance is negatively impacting neighborhoods. Because up to 4 unrelated adults living in one unit are now considered a family, sober operators are buying multifamily dwellings in neighborhoods where their business use is not allowed because they claim they're within the ordinance. The neighborhood at the corner of Brook and Walnut Streets is dealing with this now. The changes on tonight's agenda will compound this problem by making it much easier for operators who want to exceed those limits to get a variance.
30 seconds.
Given the dozens of sober facilities that are illegally operating in the city, one has to wonder how many will come forward to be legitimized if the bar to their operation is so lowered. Finally, has anybody questioned why the public hearing on this ordinance was held tonight, the same night your agenda contains items asking for final approval of these changes? The planning director asked for a public hearing back in November. Normally, public hearings are held before votes are taken,
3
not
minutes.
just minutes before the final vote to approve is had. Given this, I ask the board to reject these changes in recognition of all the city already allows for these facilities to operate. Thank you.
Ariel Moore, followed by AJ Coletti.
Good evening. My name is Ariel Moore. I am a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and I am a resident of New Hampshire. I come to this meeting tonight speaking as both an activist and as a Jewish resident of the Granite State. Ever since October 7th, it has been playing in my head how I must respond onto this tragedy in Palestine. How this genocide is being carried out in the name of my people, which is false, and also in the name of capital, all to fortify the Israeli military to take away human life, and to also enforce the politicians of Israel to continue taking away human life. There has been thousands of women and children dying every single day. Hey, this did not start October 7th. This started in 1948. Hey, as a Jewish woman, and I come here to say that this is not the religion I was taught. But when we say never again, we mean never again to anybody, especially not ever in our name. If we keep sending our money to Israel to take away innocent human life to the point where citizens are eating grass and drinking sewer water just to survive, where they're posting on social media giving a fair warning that they may not make it to the next day, then we need to take a serious look into the mirror at ourselves. Our money should be used to improve human life and provide peace, land, and bread for all, not to create a battleground in people's own backyard. So, I ask, are we willing to put an end to bloodshed, or are we willing to make the land of Palestine a graveyard of all the life that has once been?
30 seconds.
I will leave this up to the board to decide. Thank you so much, and good night.
AJ Coletti, followed by Armando Martins.
So I didn't really prepare anything specific, but I want to take this time that I have as a privilege and really just look at you all and ask, like, what are we doing here? I don't really understand how each and every one of you can undoubtedly be affected and be suffering just like everybody else in this world pretty much right now. How can you be in this position with this much privilege and continue to just stay on your hamster wheel every single day? What are you afraid of losing? Like, what material item, what love do you think you have that is so conditional that you need to, like, keep your secrets and act a certain way and whatever? Like, snap out of it. I'm just trying to say snap out of it. What comes after the existentialism and the nihilism and the, everything's going to end and this is ultimately pointless? You know what comes after that? It's the taking risks that a conditioned human who doesn't live in the matrix would take. Why are we alive right here? We are all insanely complex ecosystems. Like, isn't it insane that I have every single part inside of me that lets me, like, live, breathe, walk, speak, do all these things? What good would that be if I'm just going to suffer in this, like, abhorrent system that I was born into with no choice? And I'm the voice of pretty much everybody my age right now. And if the people my age aren't, informed enough about the actual social, things that are going on, we're all still struggling with this ultimate pointlessness that our lives are going to literally amount to nothing because the people who are in power that are older than us are not doing anything to ensure our futures. Yet you all spoon-fed us this information like home of the brave, like we fight for our people. We're a democracy. We represent our people. A democracy is supposed to be the most diversified form of government. That's why it works. Have you ever heard of the law of entropy? Or I can't get into economics right now, but I encourage you all to really understand how neoclassical economic theory is just completely scientifically unsustainable. Not only scientifically unsustainable, but humanely unsustainable. The law of entropy, the limits to growth, the list goes on and on. Like, we cannot keep continuing this way. And everything that one of us does, everything, even an environmental battle that was lost after 20 years, that is a victory because that was 20 years that they weren't drilling in some spot,
30 seconds.
I just want to ask all of you to take a look in the mirror what are you doing here? What are you doing with your life? If there's some, inner crap that's going on with you, go to therapy, for God's sakes. Like, you're adults. Let's deal with this, please. Kids like me are so sick of seeing the adults in power just be bigger children. We're done with that. We never even had our time to be children. We are so worried, sick about our lives.
3 minutes.
Like, get it together. That's all I'm going to say. Get it together, please.
Armando Martins, followed by Madison Egan.
Peace. My name is Armando Martins. I live in Ward 9. I'm here to also support a ceasefire resolution. For 4 months, hundreds of thousands of people across the U.S. have been active in the streets, in the public parks, their workplaces, classrooms, neighborhoods, combating the crystal clear genocide in Gaza and Palestine. The masses of people in the United States stand with the majority of the world in demanding a ceasefire in Palestine, including 75% of Democrats, 50% of Republicans, 68% of all people across the political spectrum. This opposition to the U.S.-Israeli genocide includes activity here in New Hampshire, where 1,500 people wrote in ceasefire in the primaries. More specifically, Manchester, for instance, 150 people shut down Elm Street for over an hour on Black Friday, the U.S.'s busiest shopping day of the year. And in December, 60 people vigorously protested the New Hampshire Democratic Party's fundraiser at the convention center up the road. As the Biden administration escalates this war into Yemen, Iraq, and Syria, the activity in opposition to the genocide will only increase. And I want to thank those of you who have the courage to stay in the room and take this seriously, because the International Court of Justice, is using the term genocide. The ICJ, a principal body of international law, announced provisional measures late last month recognizing the terrible brutality and genocidal rhetoric directed by the Israeli regime against Palestinians, ordering that the State of Israel shall take all measures within its power to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of Article 2 of the Convention of Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. And I really encourage all of you to look further into those provisional measures and think very seriously about not only how the residents of Manchester will view you, but how your children and grandchildren will view you and how you will be remembered by history in this moment. Today, we're asking you to consider passing a ceasefire resolution similar to those passed in Chicago and in Cambridge. It's imperative that the people of Manchester and our elected officials stand on the right side of history. Manchester taxpayers send over $1.7 million yearly to the genocidal Israeli regime to murder and displace children, while 788 Manchester school children experienced homelessness last year. Our schools remain underfunded, homelessness and rents continue to rise.
30 seconds.
In the U.S., almost half of all renters are paying more than 30% of their income on housing. So we really need to get our priorities straight. We need to stand with the people of Manchester and stand with the people of Palestine. Join the correct side of history, stand on the side of international humanitarian law and global world opinion. Thank you, Ed, for coming back.
Madison Egan.
Good evening. My name is Madison Egan. I live in Ward 1. I am here in support of the ceasefire resolution. This week, the number of people killed in Gaza by the brutal Israeli occupation has surpassed 27,000. At least 10,000 of those human beings were children, many of them murdered before their first birthday. The conditions those left alive are experiencing are unimaginable, left without food, water, medical aid. I ask our aldermen to take a moment to imagine what it is like in Gaza. What it is like to lose your home, your family, everything you love, while the world looks away and refuses to speak. How utterly terrifying it must be to be left to die. I have been a resident of Manchester for 15 years. I am here today to ensure that my fellow residents and I are represented. For the last 4 months, there has been sustained protest in Manchester for an immediate end to the genocide in Gaza and a free Palestine. After October 7th, City Hall was immediately lit up in blue and white for Israel, yet you have not spoken a word about the unending atrocity in Gaza. It would be a great moral failing for the city of Manchester to refuse to call for the most basic humanitarian act, a ceasefire, one I think everyone would look back on in shame. It is time for our city to represent us, to stand with Palestine, to show our humanity, and call for an immediate ceasefire. Thank you.
That concludes our list of speakers, Your Honor.
Is there a motion to take all comments under advisement and further to receive and file any written documentation presented? Alderman Long, seconded by Alderman Terrio. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Would anyone like to, or moving on to the consent agenda, would anyone like to remove any items from the consent agenda? Alderman Long?
Item 19.
Alderman Berry? I'm sorry, Alderman Burkish?
Item 20.
Others? Nope. Is there a motion to accept the balance?
So,
Motion by Alderman O'Neill, seconded by Alderman Sapienza. All those in favor? Opposed? Number 19.
thank you, Your Honor. So number 19 receives and file the bicycle master plan. So I'm just wondering that I know serving on the planning, there were a lot of applications that came forward that were adding bike racks to their apartments because of the increased use of bicycling. So I'm wondering if this is received and filed, if there was a private contribution to get this consultant hired to update the master plan, what would that be, a CIP? I mean, I don't know. I want to keep the planning board's chair plan. He worked hard on it. I think it's a great plan. Where would that go when this is received and filed? I guess is my question.
You know,
What's that?
Well, at this point, I don't know that the project has, or the plan has been discussed in a committee favorably, so it would need to start in public safety to talk about the bike lanes. I think there's an opinion from the Department of Public Works related to this, so you would probably start in public safety. And then if funding becomes available and the board approves, then...
So we could have the discussion in public safety without appropriating any money?
Of course, you can always discuss any item in the committee.
Okay. So I'll move we send the plan to public safety for discussion.
motion by Alderman Long, second by Alderman Burkish. Discussion?
We didn't have a problem with the bike plan per se, but we had a problem with paying $150,000. Are you proposing you're going to discuss a plan without paying somebody $150,000? Is that what it is?
That's correct, yeah. So if you don't have a problem with the plan, why are you receiving and filing the plan?
Because we didn't want to. It was to spend $150,000 to pay somebody,
Sorry, Your Honor,
and we didn't. So just to clarify, we didn't want to spend $150,000 on a place. So if you want to do it for free, you can find somebody. That's fine, but we just didn't want to spend $150,000.
I'll wait my turn. I don't know if there's anybody
Were there
else.
other, Chairman Lavasser, followed by Alderman Burkish?
Yeah. The issue on the table right now is to request the chair of planning board for by him to ask for $150,000. If we receive and file this, you're more than welcome to submit another letter and bring in another letter to another committee and start the process over. Sending this back is just sending back the same thing that we've already taken, unless you want to amend it, but you just start the process over. It's really simple.
Alderman Burkish?
Yeah, the reason why we had kept it on as tabled item, because we didn't want to spend $150,000 and we were looking for other funding sources for a couple months. That was the intention last year. So we felt that if we send it back to committee, at least we can continue the process. We understand that we can't spend that money now. So you're on.
Yes, Alderman Long.
Thank you, Your Honor. So my motion has nothing to do with 150,000. It has everything to do with this board discussing bike lanes. It has nothing to do with the 150,000. There was a statement that this board has even looked at it, but I'm willing to look at it. I'm willing to look at the land. If you're okay with the plan, and it's just 150,000 that has you stigmatized, then let's review the plan.
Alderman Sapienza?
Yeah, just to be clear, I'm not comfortable with the plan because from all the constituent input that I've gotten on this issue, it's all been negative. I haven't gotten any positive input from the constituents on bike lanes. Universally, across the board, everything I've heard from the constituents has been negative. They don't want it. Thank you.
Alderman Goonan? Alderman Fajardo?
I probably heard only positive from Ward 2, so that just to come back to that, but I'm not sure what we're. Can we start it all over again, just with the same letter?
I think the first thing we would have to do is vote on 19 and whether or not we want to receive and file the 150,000, and then if something wanted to be brought up under new business, to send it to committee to review or just bring it up in committee. I think that would be an appropriate. Alderman Sapienza? Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Fajardo. Sorry, she.
Thank you. I just wanted to remark that also I've had the opposite experience as compared to Alderman Sapienza, in that I mostly hear support for it, probably having to do a lot with the fact that Ward 4 is closer to part of the Center City District. Multimodal transportation is critical. It's essential for some Ward 4 residents. So being able to do that safely is pretty important. And I've mostly, again, heard support for it.
Alderman Sapienza?
I think it's worth noting, we're not voting on $150,000 here. We're only voting on a request to look for the $150,000. So this is not a vote about spending $150,000. I would not vote tonight to spend $150,000 that I don't have, but I do think it's a good idea to keep this plan alive and look for the 150. If we can find a grant or something for 150, then that would be a great thing.
Alderman Cantor?
Thank you. Everyone that I've spoken to, then they're against it 100%. They're like, all right, where are the bikers? And they're like, it's just insanity. It's hard to drive down Maple Street and actually park your car. I mean, there's a problem with a constituent and the safety. So it's been negative feedback that I've received. And I talked to a lot of people as well. Thank you. Across the city, besides Ward 6. Thank you.
Alderman Long?
Thank you, Your Honor. And also Ward 3, it's all been positive about the bike lanes. Where are the bikers? If you had gone to the Amoskeag Bridge, they're redoing it. There was probably about 30 people there, all bikers interested in getting safely across that bridge. So I'm not sure where they were from, but I'm thinking there's a lot more bikers than I think there are. And again, I'm looking to discuss the plan. I don't think it's going to cost $150,000 to discuss the plan. We're not asking for any money. Let's discuss the plan. And if there's something we could come up with that's $10,000, maybe we could get a private donation or a fund for that. I'm just saying, let's discuss the plan at minimum.
If I may,
Chairman
Your Honor, since we're all sitting around the campfire talking about all the people that called us about bikes, I just wish we had some marshmallows. I did a poll, and I got 450 responses. 448 were completely 100% against more bike lanes. I just asked a simple question, stay or go. I didn't add an opinion into it. I didn't add my own opinion into it. So I think that's like 98%. So I wanted to share that with everybody. I just wish this is going to be a long 2 years if we're actually going to sit here and argue about whether or not. Let's just read the motion, recommending that the request of the chair of the planning board for one-time funding in the amount of $150,000. It's either you're for that motion or you're not for that motion. So we can receive and file that. If somebody wants to come back and send a letter saying, We have a consultant that will do it for free. I don't even know why we would have to vote on that in any committee. If somebody wanted to go out on their own and draft some kind of a plan, they could then do it and then bring it to our board, and then we could vote for it. But seriously, guys, this is just this motion. This is going to be a long 2 years if this is what we got to deal with.
Okay. So do we have a motion to receive and file? Or do we, Alderman Long, do we want to, I think we have to dispose of number 19 first. Correct, okay. So somebody want to?
I make a motion, receive and file.
Okay, by Alderman Sapienza, seconded by Chairman Lavasser. All those in favor?
The motion is already the motion in the committee. He didn't accept it. Nobody accepted the motion. No.
The clerk?
We had a motion by Alderman Long to move the item to public safety, health, and traffic, seconded by Alderman Burkish.
Okay, we had discussion.
Go back
Okay,
forward.
so all those in favor?
Of
Okay.
the motion that was made, right?
Yes, so
Okay,
Alderman Long.
what exactly we voting on here? Point of, send it back to committee?
Alderman Long, you're making a motion to send this back to committee?
The motion is to send this to traffic to discuss the plan.
It's not the same thing that's on the agenda.
No,
So can we get confirmation from,
It's not the same thing that's on the agenda, Pat.
no.
Come on.
Alderman Long's
so the Alderman has made a motion that is different than the one that is before us.
correct. So it's to refer the, if I understand it correctly,
Right.
refer the item back to public safety, health, and traffic.
And that is,
If the parliamentarian doesn't accept that motion, then the motion, you can look for another motion.
Parliamentary inquiry. It was on the consent agenda as receive and file. Wouldn't he have to?
So the item was pulled off
Yeah.
under the rules of consent.
But wouldn't it have to be
He made a
voted on?
motion. It's up to the mayor to accept that motion.
yeah, I'm fine with the roll call. You want to take the roll call?
What's the motion? We're going to send it back to committee?
Good. So the motion is to send the item back to public safety, health, and traffic. Roll call requested by Alderman Long. So Alderman Long,
Yes.
Alderman Fajardo,
Yes.
Alderman Tony Sapienza,
Yes.
Alderman Cantor,
No.
Alderman O'Neill,
Yes?
Alderman Lavasser,
No.
Alderman Terrio,
No.
Alderman Ed Sapienza,
No.
Alderman Burkish,
Yes.
Alderman Berry, Alderman Vincent,
No.
Alderman Thomas,
Yes.
Morgan?
and Alderman Morgan,
Morgan?
Yes.
Alderman Goonan?
Alderman Goonan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Item 20, Alderman Burkish.
Do I need to make a motion to approve the fire chief applying for the SAFER grant? Like to make a
That's your
motion?
motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Alderman Burkish, second by Alderman O'Neill. Discussion? Discussion? Alderman Sapienza?
I think this issue is bigger than just the 12 additional firefighters. I mean, every grant needs to be judged on its merits, but this is only a motion for permission to apply for a grant. Why wouldn't we apply for a grant? If you get the grant, then you can decide to accept it or not. So to turn it down at this point, I don't get it. And every grant needs to be judged on its own merits, but this particular grant has the fewest strings attached I've ever seen. Once the money runs out, we're not obligated to do anything. And that was made pretty clear. So the other thing about this is I think we're sending the wrong message to all the department heads. This one happened to be the fire chief, but the message this board should be sending to the department heads is to go out and find grants. Every grant dollar is $1 that the taxpayers don't have to pay. Whether it's firemen or something for the highway department, something for the police department. Every grant is $1 the taxpayer of the city of Manchester doesn't have to pay. So I'm going to support this permission, and I'm going to hope the fire chief gets the grant, and I'm going to thank him for all his efforts.
Chairman Lavasser, followed by Alderman Terrio.
Thank you. Have you read the grant?
Yeah, I read my packet every month.
So the
Every-
grant,
every
as far as,
meeting.
you read the grant, the actual 2023 grant?
Yeah,
Okay.
I read my packet.
Is the 2023 grant been posted? Or did you get a different grant that I don't know about? I heard the grant hadn't been actually posted yet. Is there
The grant has
somebody out
not
there I
been
don't know about?
posted. I think the alderman's referring to my letter.
Was that?
I think the alderman's referring to my letter.
He was reading your letter, but he said he read the grant.
I don't know, I didn't
Well, I
understand.
read-
But
I read the packet.
the 2023 grant will be out sometime next month.
It's going to be what?
Sometime next month.
Out in March.
We expect it to be very similar to the 2022 grant.
But you don't know what's in the grant? Or if you do, please, because I've asked to see the grant, or at least a letter from somebody who told you what the grant was going to be, or an email. I haven't gotten anything.
Yeah, we have spoken with FEMA. They expect no changes to be from 2022 to 2023. They expect it to be the same grant.
But the grant itself has not been posted, and you have not seen the new grant, correct?
It has not. That is correct.
Okay, that's all. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Alderman Terrio?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thanks, Chief, for coming in. So our concern was, we just wanted some more information, primarily with the 12 firefighters. By year 3, we were concerned that between pay and benefits, it was going to be about $1.2 million on payroll, or more, minimum of 1.2, but probably higher. So our concern was, you know, we don't have a problem with hiring 12 firefighters. Our concern, we had 2 concerns, was we now have 12 firefighters, the grant runs out, we don't want to lay people off, but now we're going to pick up $1.2 million in payroll with Chief Cash, and just, I wanted to get you on the record. 2 things is, you know, I think we need these 12 firefighters, but you have about 6 to 8 people retire every year, correct?
Yeah, between 6 to 10 is probably more the average, to be honest with you.
And so of the 12 firefighters, you were thinking you would use some of them to fill holes through the attrition, correct?
That is correct.
And then the other, you have a large overtime budget. The others would be used to, I know there's basically you would use your overtime budget to pay for the others, so there would be no hit under the tax cap. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Alderman Kelly?
I just wanted to say that I am not opposed to this grant. I do know, I did speak to the chief. I do know what goes on, you know, every day in the city. I do know that firefighters are not only responsible for fires, they are responsible for other things that are happening in the city. We have a lot of crises in the city. Everybody knows what goes on. The only issue that I see is what Alderman Terrio just brought up, what happens after those 3 years. I would never want to see someone lose their job, but trying to find that money maybe going into the budget afterwards might be a little bit tricky. You might be able to develop a plan. The only thing that I would be opposed to is maybe having the 12. People might feel more comfortable with having 6 and go from there, because then maybe after the 3 years you might not have to do anything with them. They can stay on, and that would be wonderful. So I just wanted to put in there that I'm not fully opposed to it. I do want to see the grant, and I think that would be very helpful for all the board to see the grant when you get it in March, to just look it over and maybe ease people's minds.
Thank you.
Alderman O'Neill?
Chief, you and I have spoken several times about this grant.
That is correct, Alderman.
Your intent is to add 3 firefighters per shift.
That is correct.
You have 4 shifts in the city. That's why the number 12, correct?
That is correct.
So you also were very clear to me that the concern that was shared about what to do at the end of the grant was that you would manage it through attrition. And I don't know if this is from you or I read this someplace, but is there 9 retirements or planned retirements in this fiscal year alone? I don't know.
Yeah, we're right around the number 9. There
So-
could be a couple others that I don't know about.
So that's a manageable, certainly achieving it through attrition is a very manageable way if
Yeah.
there's no intent to keep the additional 12 firefighters at the end of the grant, if you're successful in receiving it to begin with.
If we are successful in getting this grant, and if we get those 12 firefighters and increase the per battalion staffing by 3 people, I am confident that at the end of the 3 years, if those firefighters are not funded, I will be able to manage it in my budget. I will take care of it. I will not lay off any firefighters. They will be done through attrition. The process it's the budgetary process. Every year we go through a budget, and every year, the amount of firefighters that are on the street is up for debate, as is with every other department.
And if I follow up, Your Honor?
Please.
Thank you. You shared with me, did you have a plan where these firefighters would go?
Currently, yeah, we do. So the firehouse we're looking at first is Station 5 in the north end. That is currently the busiest fire engine outside of headquarters. We're then looking at Station 7 to get an extra firefighter down the south end. We are going between Station 2 and Station 6 on the west side, leaning a little more towards Station 6. But we are looking to kind of pull through some of the data that is skewed a little bit just because we had Engine 9 in Station 2 for a long period of time.
And you did share with me, although Station 6 would be ideal, the facility may not be large enough to house 7 firefighters.
It's going to be tight. We're going to look into it. But if we make that decision, they'll make do.
You also said, looking at the data, it's a little skewed because Station 9 was under construction, Engine 9 was reassigned to Station 2. Mm-hmm. But you have a plan, mm-hmm. as you've had a plan with creating the ALS engine companies, mm-hmm. which you've been implementing. So I think there's a plan in place to go get the grant and to manage it through its life, and then what happens at the end of it. So you have my full support with this.
Thank you. And just to touch on the 12 from the Alderman, I appreciate our concerns. The 12, one is to get those guys on those apparatus. Two, we're trying to make an argument towards the SAFER grant. The grant is graded by firefighters, it's graded by a computer, it goes through several grading levels. The goal, if we can get to 12, will bring us to 50% compliance with the NFPA standard, which says that every fire truck should have 4 firefighters on it. That 50% number we feel gives us the best chance to get the grant. We have applied for this grant twice for 8 people. We have not gotten it. After having conversations with FEMA, it is believed that we did not get it because we did not ask for enough people. So that is why we came up with number 12. 12 will get us that 50% standard, and that's a 50% minimum national standard that we are trying to get to. And we feel that will provide a good amount of safety for the residents as well as the firefighters on duty.
Alderman Sapienza, followed by Alderman Vincent.
Thanks. Chief, this grant comes out in March, correct?
That is correct.
Is there a time limit for applying for this grant?
There is.
What is the deadline?
It will come with the grant. It's typically 6 to 8 weeks. It'll be somewhere in there.
6 to 8 weeks after the grant comes out?
The grant will come out, yep, and we have a few weeks to fill it out.
All right, so we're not under the gun here time-wise, right?
No, we're not. We're trying to get a head start on the grant. Typically, we ask to permission to apply ahead of the grant so that we can start the process. Because we'll write the grant, okay? We have a team set up, ready to write the grant. That grant will be reviewed by other fire departments that have gotten this grant before. We've talked to several fire departments that have gotten this grant, that they're willing to help us out, look over the grant, check on, is it written in the best way? Is the narrative give us the best chance? Are we hitting all our spots that we need to hit on budgeting? It's a fairly extensive grant. We'd like to be ahead of it.
Understood. All right, thank you.
Alderman Vincent.
Thank you, Your Honor. Chief, I appreciate the letter. That certainly brought clarity to the issue from the forefront. And I think clarity is what bringing us where we are sitting right now today. That's really what this is about. Nobody wants to deny a grant. That's definitely not the case. If I may, the grant we apply for the grant, yep. March time frame. When is something like this usually approved? Like, when are we looking at for a time frame? And I have a follow-up that leads to why I asked that.
Yeah, so it goes to the feds, right? So it goes to FEMA.
Right.
We're looking at over a year before we find out. It could be up to 18 months.
That's what I figured. I knew it was some time.
The process has slowed down significantly. Typically, this grant is out earlier than it is now.
Right.
It doesn't take as long as it does. The federal government's moving at a slow rate right now.
Yeah. Totally understand that. So let's say we approve for this, we get approved for this 18 months out. Now, when we get approved for that, how long before the approval for the collection of the grant funds comes to the department? What's that window of time?
You have a 6-month window. You can shorten that with a waiver, but that gives us 6 months to essentially, interview, hire, get personnel on. We can apply to have that shortened if we need to, but another 6 months gives us 2 years before they would probably be on a fire truck.
So we're not looking at tomorrow? For anything,
No,
really.
no.
So, and one final question, if I may. Now, you answered part of it by saying that part of our timeline takes into account, we have to hire firefighters and all that. 12 that's a lot of firefighters.
That's correct.
Realistically, are we going to be able to, do you think you're going to get that in a short window of time? What do you think that time frame is going to be to hire 12? Or can we put out and hire 1, 2, 3, and then 4, whatever however the pool comes, how does that affect the grant money? Because they're going to give you this money. Do you see what I'm trying to ask?
I see exactly what you're saying.
You're asking for 12, and if you can only hire 3, 4,
Yep.
where's the rest of the money? How does that work?
You can apply for a waiver. So
Okay.
if some of those, say, for instance, we weren't able to.
Right.
We'll just use that as a hypothetical. We could apply for a waiver beyond the 3 years. So say we hired 4 members 7 months in, we could apply for a waiver for those 7 members as it gets beyond that 3-month period.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And it is my feeling that we will be able to hire 12 people.
I believe so as well. Thank you.
Chairman Lavasser?
You have 3 years to hire, or do you have to hire all 12 within, or right after the 180 days is up?
You have to do your best to hire all 12 within 180
So you
days,
can't
but you can
stagger.
apply for waivers.
You can't stagger them.
You can apply for a waiver. We would try to hire all 12.
Okay, so how long before you know you've gotten the grant? I don't know if that's been asked.
Yeah, like I spoke to Alderman Vincent, we're looking at probably a year to 18 months before we find out.
Before you find out?
Yeah.
1 year?
At minimum.
after you apply.
I'd say it's closer to 18, Alderman.
Okay.
Chairman,
all right.
I apologize.
So that would be 2 budgets away from now, just about?
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
you don't have to start hiring for 6 months or 3 months?
6 months.
6 months. So
180
you're
days.
2 years out of there? Okay. If I may, Your Honor, I'd like to just make a friendly amendment to this particular motion. I just ask that that if, in fact, when the grant is finally produced by FEMA, if it is a tiered grant, that it be brought back to this board, and in any event, the grant be sent to each member of the board by email.
I have no problem with that, Chairman.
Alderman Burkish?
Motion to move the question.
He had an amendment.
He had an amendment, Alderman Burkish.
Can't that just happen without an amendment? Courtesy, the chief will send the grant to everyone, we don't need to be voting on that.
Well,
It's okay. I'll send the grant either way. I'll do whatever's needed.
if I may, Mr. O'Neill, Alderman O'Neill, I think we've been told that it's a non-tiered grant for 3 years. It makes a big difference if it's not. Because the second year would be 50%, the third year would be 75%. So I think it's kind of important that we be notified immediately and that it come back to the board for another vote. If it's tiered. If it's non-tiered, it doesn't have to come back for a vote, but at least send us a copy of the grant so we can read it.
Absolutely.
Your Honor, we're going to have to vote to accept the grant anyway, right?
Correct.
So-
Apply for the grant is different. Talking about applying.
So Chairman Lavasser has an amendment to the existing. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Terrio. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
The ayes have it. So I believe there's still a motion on the floor from Alderman Burkish.
Roll call.
Clerk will please call the roll.
Alderman Burkish.
Yes.
Alderman Berry.
Yes.
Alderman Vincent.
Sorry. Alderman Vincent has a question.
Yeah, what
The
exactly?
motion before us is to
Can
accept
you
the
read
safe.
the motion that we're voting on? What we're voting on right now?
Alderman Burkish's motion was to accept the grant, or accept the request from the fire chief to apply for the 2023 SAFER grant with the amendment that if it is a tiered grant, come back to the BMA and the BMA is notified immediately.
That's what I was clarifying, if that amendment was on there. Yes. Yes.
Comes back for a vote.
Right.
Yes.
Alderman Vincent's yes. Alderman Thomas.
Yes.
Alderman Morgan.
Yes.
Alderman Goonan.
Yes.
Alderman Long.
Yes.
Alderman Fajardo.
Yes.
Alderman Sapienza.
Yes.
Alderman Cantor.
Yes.
Alderman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderman Lavasser.
Yes.
Alderman Terrio.
Yes.
Alderman Sapienza.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great.
Thank you.
Regular business. Reports of the Committee on Community Improvement. Ladies and gentlemen, what is your pleasure?
There are no reports from the Committee on Community Improvement, Your Honor.
Is there a motion to recess the meeting to allow the Committee on Finance to meet?
Seconded.
Motion by Alderman Long, second by Alderman O'Neill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I would like to call the meeting to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Morgan. Here. Alderman Goonan.
Here.
Alderman Long.
Here.
Alderman Fajardo. Alderman Sapienza. Alderman Cantor. Alderman O'Neill.
Here.
Alderman Lavasser. Alderman Terrio.
Here.
Alderman Sapienza.
Here.
Alderman Burkish. Alderman Berry. Alderman Vincent.
Here.
Alderman Thomas.
Here.
All present.
Resolutions. Is there a motion to read by titles only?
Read by titles only and exempt and waive the readings?
I just have, is there a motion to read by titles only?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Second.
Your Honor, it's, instead of having it, when you waive the reading, he doesn't have to read all this.
Right.
He really has a hard time. We noticed that,
I understand that. Yeah, it's
Oh,
just
okay.
not what's,
all right, no,
Yeah.
I know.
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Is there a motion that the resolutions ought to pass and be enrolled?
So move.
Okay. Alderman O'Neill, seconded by Alderman Long. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Is there a motion that the budget authorizations be approved subject to final adoption of the related resolutions? Motion by Chairman Lavasser, second by Alderman Long. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, motion by Alderman O'Neill. Second, Alderman Vincent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Is there a report from the Committee on Finance? Report to the Committee on Finance, if available. Ladies and gentlemen, what is your pleasure?
The Committee on Finance respectfully recommends, after due and careful consideration, that resolutions amending FY23 CIP authorizing and appropriating funds in the amount of $73,341.99 to return to CDBG unprogrammed funds, amending FY24 CIP authorizing and appropriating funds in the amount of $4,995 for CIP 412424 Police Academy Cadre.
Your Honor, can I move to waive the readings?
Yes.
Thank you.
Seconded by Alderman Fajardo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Motion to pass and enroll.
Yes. Is there a motion to pass and enroll?
I'll move.
Is there a okay. So Alderman Long, second by Alderman Sapienza. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
And there's no reports from the Public Safety, Health, and Traffic Committee, Your Honor.
Okay. So moving to
30. Item 30.
Is the motion to read by titles only?
Waive the readings, Your Honor?
Waive the readings? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I'll motion that the order, that the resolutions
Ought
ought
to be passed and enrolled. Okay. Second by Alderman O'Neill. All those in favor?
This is item 31, is that?
30.
Item 30.
30? Okay. All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Number 31, ordinance. There's a motion to read by title only. Alderman Fajardo, second. By Alderman O'Neill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Clerk will please read it.
So,
An ordinance amending the zoning ordinance, Chapter 155, the City of Manchester Code of Ordinances, to provide reasonable accommodations to disabled persons by defining disability and adopting RSA 674-33, Section 5.
Chairman Lavasser? We need a first. Is there a motion to ordain?
I'll second, Your Honor.
Second by Alderman O'Neill. Discussion. Chairman Lavasser.
Is there a way to vote for this, Matt, without having to vote on the second part that says that, the part that was, I brought up before concerning,
You want to strike the language,
Yeah.
certain language, so you would
strike the
amend?
language on the addiction issue as being part of this ordinance? May either vote against that part, I don't know if it would pass.
Where are you, Alderman Lavasser?
We could divide it.
So you're looking to amend the ordinance that's before this board?
Is that how we would do that? I just don't know what the particular language is on that. Is there a way to divide that out at some point if we tabled it?
So, if I may, Your Honor.
I think they're conferring on Chairman Lavasser's question.
I'm sorry. I was speaking to the
Chairman
solicitor.
Lavasser.
I'm sorry, I was speaking to the solicitor. What was your question?
No, you can't go home yet. The issue of whether or not I can get that part out that I find repugnant, with the portion of the addiction as being a reason for a disability. I don't believe it's been codified. And I haven't heard of any real case law stating that that has to be part of our ordinance. I'm not going to get the votes.
Your Honor, can we ask the planning director to come up again? I just want to make sure I'm clear on,
He said we can.
I thought as written, our outside counsel
Doesn't matter.
was good with this as written, but I want to make sure I understand this.
You are correct, Alderman, that our outside counsel is good with this as written. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't strike the language if you want to. It's also possible that you could table, have further conference with the outside counsel, go over this particular issue, talk about it more. All of those are options to you.
Alderman Sapienza.
I believe earlier you said that this does not remove any barriers to people that want to create, say, sober houses.
Correct. Nothing practically changes as a result of the enactment of this ordinance as
This
proposed.
doesn't make it any easier to get a sober house approved, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Alderman Goonan. Sorry.
Yep, sorry.
Followed by Chairman Lavasser.
Can we just vote on this as written? Can we make a motion to do that? Right. Okay, got it. I'm new.
I believe a few more questions still exist, and then we can take. Chairman Lavasser.
So he just asked, it wouldn't make it harder, but it also wouldn't make it less hard, or it wouldn't, it wouldn't make it less hard for this to pass, it wouldn't make it harder, either way.
Correct. These laws already exist. Whether the city adopts this language into the ordinance or not does not change the legal landscape.
Right, I apologize, Mike. Go ahead. So regardless of what the vote is this evening, the City of Manchester, through the zoning board, is still going to continue to operate under the state and federal laws that you outlined today through the ADA and housing, regardless of what we do tonight. Nothing changes beyond the fact that we protect ourselves in the future or provide a stronger stance for us in the future with regard to any pending lawsuits.
That is correct, Mayor.
Chairman Lavasser.
However, you did say we could strike that language specifically to the issue of addiction. If a person is addicted, that is a criteria. You did say we could strike that. So if we strike it, it won't matter if we strike it or not?
I mean, I'm not the end-all, be-all on this because we have an outside counsel who is involved in litigation like this all the time. They are the experts who we have hired to advise us on this. They approved this language, but it is my understanding that this language is not necessary to be in there in order to, to use the state and federal laws that are being adopted here to do the process that we're already doing. It's not necessary.
You're familiar with our shelter law, the one with the sidewalk, right? We have a state statute says you can't, blah, blah, blah. We added all that extra language on there. We didn't have to add that extra language. Is that the same thing as what I'm talking about here? We don't have to add that extra language.
I mean, I don't really want to analogize to that other law. That's a totally other legal issue that I'm not, frankly,
Well, it's the same
well-versed.
thing. We're actually adding language from a state. We're adding extra language.
We are adding language to, the proposal is to add language to call attention to that issue so that it is clear that the city is acting in good faith and puts us in a better position should there be litigation down the road.
All right. I'm just voting against the whole
I'm sorry?
thing instead. You get it.
Alderman Barry.
Thank you, Your Honor. So Jeff, and I know you've been clear, and I get it, I understand where you're coming from. As written, our attorney, our city solicitor, as well as attorneys that are representing the city in lawsuits, want that in the language. They want that in the ordinance.
They have approved this language, yes. There was a collaborative effort amongst my department, solicitor, and the outside counsel to all come up with this language.
You're not representing us. You're not an attorney representing us.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, there's a motion on the floor or to ordain. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay. Opposed.
There's only 3 of us. We already voted. You asked for it too late.
We're good.
Wait a minute, I have the right to ask for roll
Okay, hey, let's lower, we'll lower the volume.
Call the roll.
Please call the roll.
Alderman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderman Lavasser. No. Alderman Terrio.
Yes.
Alderman Ed Sapienza.
No.
Alderman Burkish.
Yes.
Alderman Barry. Yes. Alderman Vincent.
Yes.
Alderman Thomas.
Yes.
Alderman Morgan.
No.
Alderman Goonan.
Yes.
Alderman Long.
Yes.
Alderman Fajardo. Alderman Sapienza.
Yes.
Alderman Cantor.
No.
The motion passes.
Okay, is there any new business?
Frank.
Hey, stop. Alderman Long, followed by Alderman Sapienza and Terrio.
Thank you, Your Honor. When we redid the Mill Girl, there was a Doobie Hot Dogs was there. We had to put them out while we were doing a construction. Once we finished that construction, it was designated as a park. And with that said, Parks and Rec has a policy with which they put bids out to their vendors. I think this is a unique situation. This person built this business for 15 years. It's a thriving business today because of the efforts that he's done. So going out to bid, there are other bidders, I would assume, would want to have a food truck there because it's a great spot now. Everybody that, when you go there, it's busy. So what I'd ask my colleagues is I'd like to move that we waive that bidding process for 2 years, our term, and not have that location, that vendor location be out to bid.
Second. Second by Alderman Barry.
Question.
Discussion, Chairman Lavasser.
Is there anybody in the city that's opposed to this? Or who's in charge of actually asking for the bid?
Alderman Long.
Well, it's a revenue. I get that.
Right, I know, but who
It's a
sends out for the bid? Like planning or?
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec. Is Parks and Rec okay with that?
No.
I mean, I'm with you on it. I
No,
just
they're
didn't
not
know
okay
where
with
it was
it.
coming from.
No, they want the revenue.
Oh. All right.
So the standard process for all of our concessions is to put it out to competitive bid. If the board chooses to waive that, then the board chooses to waive that, and that's what we'll do.
Alderman Terrio.
Thank you, Your Honor. So this vendor is paying you now?
No, he's not.
Oh, wait a minute. So,
Because it was the designation was changed. That's why.
so I didn't realize that. So,
Don't turn off your microphone and talk.
so we're not going to put out to bid for 2 years, but he's not going to, so that means he's not going to pay for 2 years?
He never has.
Alderman O'Neill.
Thank you, Your Honor. My opinion, observation, the gentleman has labored down there for many a year. You said 15 years. And now, because we did a little bit of improvements, now we're calling it a park. It wasn't a park for the 15 years he's been down there. So I support Alderman Long's motion. He's worked hard. He's become a fixture down there, and I support that in this particular situation. Thank you.
Alderman Cantor, followed by Alderman Sapienza.
Yes. What would the fee be?
Well, we put it out to bid, so we don't know what that fee would be. He would propose something, potential competitive vendor could propose something as well, and whatever they come back with.
So right now, he's not paying anything to be anywhere, just to be down there?
He pays for permits, clerk's permits. Health department.
He pays a
So he's not paying any
peddler's permit,
area?
not for that.
So I'm just curious, I pay property taxes, so I was just curious as a business owner, just curious.
He pays that stuff.
Yeah, I believe there's is it a peddler's license that he gets from the clerk's office?
He gets a peddler's license for $150 for the year for that location. And I think the issue is now that Parks would like to go out to bid, so it'll be additional on top of that.
I was just curious on what that looked like.
Did you have your question answered? Okay. Alderman Alderman Cantor. Was there something additional?
No, that's all right.
Okay. Alderman Sapienza?
I assume he's probably paying the health department too, right? Because it's a
Correct.
food establishment? So,
I see Anna shaking her head.
Alderman O'Neill?
That was my question as well, Your Honor. Thank you.
Just one more question.
Yep. Chairman
Is
Levack?
there an ordinance that states that we have to send this out to bid? Are we waiving a particular ordinance or a policy or just the way we do things or the way things have been done?
I think that would be most appropriately directed to the city solicitor to answer.
I'm sorry, Tim, I can't hear you.
I would direct that to the city solicitor, Alderman. I don't know the answer to that question.
Solicitor Rice?
I think it's a departmental policy.
Okay. I just want to make sure if we're waiving something,
Departmental
we're waiving
policy.
something that's waivable or, yes, waivable.
Other questions? All right, so we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Other new business? Alderman Sapienza?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I just want to, basically an announcement, I guess the Monday, March 4th joint meeting, is that tentatively scheduled?
No, that is scheduled. on the
Okay, and
books.
that's scheduled for March 4th, 5:30 at Memorial?
That's correct.
And that's the two boards, Board of School Committee, Board of Mayor and Aldermen, to basically discuss the bond issue with the schools?
It's to get a background on
Background
priority
information,
one
I think it's
and ask any questions you want.
That's great. I think it's a great idea. I hope it's well attended. I just want folks to know that we all realize something needs to be done. We're just not, we're not all in agreement exactly what that something is, but I won't go into that. I think this meeting's a great idea. All right, thank you.
Alderman Terrio, followed by Alderman Burkish.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I wanted to send something to committee. I'm not sure which committee, but so for years, people have come to me, Democrats, Republicans, and said, but to piggyback onto what Ed's talking about, the school bond is going to be $550 million. And people say they have fears. They don't name names, and they can't give me any specifics, but they're afraid that people in the city or the BMA are going to personally profit from city contracts. And this contract's huge. It's $550 million. So I'd like to send something to the committee to see if what we're doing is correct. Are we transparent? Is there a way we can tighten up our ordinances so that, to put the public's fears to rest, that we aren't, nobody in the school district or on the school board or on the BMA is personally profiting from any city contracts, Your Honor. So I don't know which committee that would need to go to. But I'd like to send something to a committee to explore that and to strengthen up any ordinances if they're found lacking.
I think what you're referring to are charter violations, though that behavior is prohibited by charter. And it's up to this board to determine when there's a violation of the charter.
If we could put some procedures and policies into play, I understand it's a charter violation, just to strengthen that.
Administration would be the committee to discuss ordinances of this nature.
All right, thank you. I'd like to send, can I get a second? To send something to
Committee on Administration.
to explore that language.
Is there a discussion surrounding
I'll
Alderman?
second the motion first, Your Honor.
Alderman Long?
So as chair of that committee, if you could articulate exactly what you're looking for, I would appreciate it. So if you could articulate and send to the clerk articulate what exactly you're looking for and send it to the clerk?
Sure. So I'd like to look around at the different other municipalities to strengthen conflicts of interest and to prevent, I don't think it's happening, but I get accusations from the public that, unfounded fears that they think that people in the city somehow could be personally benefiting from city contracts. And so I'd just like to explore, maybe what we're doing is perfectly fine, but if we can get stronger language and ordinances and things like that, so that to put the public's fears to rest that we aren't personally benefiting from city contracts.
So you're looking to strengthen disclosure laws of what a person does for, right?
So I could,
Please, Alderman Long.
so I could probably ask the municipal association to get me a list, I would think they would have it, of conflicts, and see what the other municipalities have, because I'm thinking that ours is pretty much up there.
Sounds good.
But-
Thank you.
But I could do that, okay.
So we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Alderman Burkish?
Yes, a couple things, Your Honor. First of all, I think we ought to recognize the clerk's office and the volunteers that worked at the polls. They did an outstanding job supporting, the people's right. Thank you. Another question I had for you, Your Honor, is I notice on the position vacancies that Public Works has some equipment operators, and I'm concerned, I know during this last storm, I did get some calls about delays of streets being cleared, and I was hoping that you would consider filling those vacancies, because these are on the hold list. Is that the way I'm reading this right? Director Drabeck, that you sent out to us? Yeah, we all got it by email, not in the agenda.
So the list that you got were those that have been sent to the mayor's office through the regular process and may not have been acted on at the time that I prepared that list. I don't have the most current information as of right this second. I could go down and look for me if you'd like, but that list was prepared in advance, of course, to get to the clerk's office in time for the meeting. So it may have changed by today.
Okay, so I was hoping, Your Honor, you'd consider filling Public Works vacancies, if possible. Thank you.
Other new business? Alderman O'Neill?
Your Honor, there was a handout tonight, won't read the memo into the record, but I'd like to work with you and my colleagues to begin a discussion. It's my opinion that we're not serving the young people of our city well. If you have money, you're okay, but we have in my opinion, a lot of young people that are being left out for various reasons. And all I want to do is, I don't have the answers, but I've heard aldermen talk about this. I certainly talked about it, and just begin the discussion, try to gain as much information as we can, so.
Yep, I would have no problem with that. I know Alderman Morgan's done a great deal of work on youth sports in the city. I think you'd find a lot of people that would want to explore these opportunities. Chairman Lavasser?
Yes, I have been talking with Mr. Morgan, who has been forefront in this, basically ran on this issue concerning the city's underutilization of parks, venues, school, gyms, et cetera, and how important it is for children to touch the grass, touch the glass. You hear that from my young boys who say they're up against kids who play Fortnite 100 hours a week, and they know they've never actually put their foot on a football field or a basketball court. So in talking about that, I am going to be forming a committee that I expect Mr. Morgan will chair, and I think we're going to temporary name is just going to be the Committee on Manchester's Youth and Sports. And we want to put a committee together here, and we want to get this going and talk about it. And if you're interested in joining that committee, there'll be committee members of 5 on there. So if you want to send me an email, we'll form that committee for this next meeting in February. But your letter is very timely. Thanks.
Other new business? Alderman Morgan?
I just want to say thank you to Alderman O'Neill for bringing this to the attention of the board, because it's definitely something that we need to
put focus on. So thank you.
Alderman Fajardo, followed by Alderman Cantor.
Thanks. I just wanted to point out in Director Bouloigne's newsletter that went out yesterday that the city is now funding the Brook Street shelter, and it reopened on the 22nd. And I just wanted to commend Director Bouloigne and Owen for the work to get that back online.
Alderman Cantor.
Yes, I was wondering if we could have a list of all the sober homes and the nonprofits in Manchester, and to create some kind of a committee, if possible, to help them sync up and create transparency and accountability. And I was also wondering about 39 Beach Street, if it's still a low barrier homeless shelter.
Please.
Hi. Thank you, Alderman Fajardo. Yes, the Beach Street shelter is still a very low barrier. We've been operating at the same standard operating procedures since we opened. Was there a particular question about that or a concern?
No, I was just wondering and wanting everyone to know. So do you check IDs? Do you, how long are they allowed to stay? Is it still, if they have a warrant for your arrest, or their arrest, do you check that? You know, are they sex offenders?
Yeah,
these kinds of questions.
Would it be helpful for me to prepare something that kind of provides all of the kind of operational standards? I've prepared something like that before, but maybe if you have it in writing, it's going to be easier for you to reference. And I also, it's due time that I give you kind of a re-up on the report that I provided before the holiday time last year, where I was kind of able to give you the breakdown, the demographics, all the people served, and so I could kind of detail that all out. And if you let me know what specific questions you're interested in, I can make sure I can focus that.
Those are them. And also, with the open borders, do you have any illegal immigrants that have beds that other people need?
Great. I'll prepare that. I'll prepare that for you.
Chairman Lavasser.
One of the concerns about being not just a low barrier, but as you, in your words, the lowest barrier shelter in the state, you don't frisk people coming in, and you don't frisk them on the way out, correct? There's no search at all of people's, when they walk in, and there's no search while they're in the, they can't be searched, or they are not searched at any time, correct?
I don't know that we're the lowest barrier shelter in the state.
Well, those are your words. I take them from.
That might have been something I misspoke about or didn't mean to represent, but I can tell you right now that I don't know that to be true, but we are the lowest barrier shelter in Manchester, and we don't frisk people or search them, and no other state-funded shelter, any other shelter does that.
Right, so you don't?
We don't, no.
That's fine. I just wanted to, there's no, so you don't know what they're bringing in, whether they're bringing in drugs or needles or whatever. You don't know that, right? I'm not, and please don't take this as a criticism. It's not, it's just a question. I don't know if that's, if you say we're a low barrier, do they search anybody at any other ones?
We have a right to ask people to show us their belongings if we have concerns. We're very concerned about safety in the shelter, so our standard operating procedures, which I'll provide for you, you can take a look and you can kind of see that people aren't allowed to have weapons. They're not allowed to display any sort of unsafe behavior or activities. If we suspect that's happening, someone reports that it's happening, we have concerns that it's happening, we can employ all kinds of ways to kind of ensure safety. And certainly if anyone's breaking any of the rules or any of those things cross any sort of reasonable line, they're dismissed for the day. That's the common practice. If something was more serious, they'd be dismissed for longer. But typically, if someone breaks the rules, they're out for a day, they come back in, we try again, and this is how behavioral change happens with this population. It's been extremely successful. We've been very low incident, as you know.
I think I'm sorry, finish?
No, go ahead.
I think what would be helpful, there are a number of new members on the board, and similar to what we're doing on the school board side with educating us on the phase one, it'd be helpful if you came back at another time with a presentation to give us a full look at the shelter and updated numbers.
Yes. I think that's a really good idea. So I'll work on that right away, and then as soon as I can get back on the agenda, I'll come back, and any sort of questions you can think of in between time, feel free to let me know. You can send me an email, let me know last minute, and I'll make sure I bake that in, and so that we can answer all your questions and have a really rich discussion.
I just want one more question, because you say you're actually tracking a lot more than you did when, you first got on the job. Obviously, you're tracking a lot more. Are each of these incidents of whether or not somebody has been disciplined for a day or longer, are those actually compiled in a record also?
Yes, yeah. Every time there's an incident, staff complete an incident report, and then there's a review process of that incident report, and those things are then tracked.
And you have that information yourself?
Yes, yes.
Cool, great, thanks, I appreciate that.
Any other new business?
I would like just to answer your other question about the way that we get sober homes involved with the nonprofits, because I think that that's a perfect example of what we're doing right now with building the attendance of the continuum of care. So sober homes are part of the continuum of care because they serve folks that interact with the homeless population. So sometimes some of the folks in sober homes have been homeless before, have a history of homelessness. They're a huge part of the fabric that makes up all of the services. So it's a perfect place for them to come and join. So we're continuing to hold those informational sessions that you've been a part of. So if you know sober homes or anyone else does, we will reach out to them as well and invite them to be a part of our continuum of care so we can all work together.
And one more question about visiting. I used to go there often because I wanted to check in with a few people. What are the rules for us aldermen to be allowed in?
Yes, it's not just for aldermen, it's for anyone of the public. So unless you are an approved provider or an approved staff member or police or some other sort of first responder, you can't come into the space. And that's just a common practice for any program to respect the dignity and the privacy of the people in the program. So any of you, if you're interested in coming to the shelter, you can arrange that with me personally, and I would meet you down there, bring you there. We could arrange it, and anything that you need, we could make that happen.
I know this is it's a very important topic. I would love for you to come back before the board and provide a presentation at a later date. Yeah. So is there any other new business?
Briefly, Your Honor, very briefly.
I'm going to have this be the last.
All right. I also have visited and just dropped in and made donations of razors, shaving cream, and soap and whatnot. But that's not allowed without an appointment, is that what you're saying?
Donations are actually allowed without an appointment because we collect donations in a different way. So we advertise fully all over the city, over the website. I've sent those donation pages out to you all to say, please bring your donations 7 days a week between 9 and 5. We have kind of a receiving deck and a process for that, but that's different than coming in and having the guest be exposed to visitors. We don't want them to feel uncomfortable. So it's just a way to kind of manage the nuance of visitors coming in so that we can respect the dignity and make sure people feel like they're comfortable in the space. Sometimes people aren't always at their best. Sometimes they're recovering. Sometimes they're having a difficult day, having a medical issue. And so just like when you're in your own home, you don't necessarily want to have visitors when you don't have visitors. We try to give people heads up about it. And the mayor was with me there last week, and we gave people heads up about that. People could then make choices whether or not they were in the space or not.
All right, thanks.
Alderman Long, Alderman O'Neill.
Thank you, Your Honor. So funding for 39 Beach Street is through June
Yes.
24? Funding for Brook Street is through?
The Brook Street funding went through our CIP process, so the Light of Life Ministries is the operational source that's running the Brook Street shelter. We also have that relationship with the building through the state, so that's kind of an offering that was part of a process through the CIP department, so that was a voted on process when we had.
Right, so how long is that funding there for Brook Street?
I'm actually not familiar, that goes through the planning department.
Is it more than through June?
I don't know the parameters of their funding. Yeah, thank you.
And I would need to look, Alderman, just to confirm the exact amount of time, but it's multi-year. I mean, that was through an RFP process to the affordable housing ARPA dollars. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Alderman O'Neill.
Your Honor, do I recall, is January the month where the homeless counts are done?
Point in time. Yes, Alderman, point in time.
When will we see that report?
Unfortunately, it's not till later in the year, which is an annoyance to us as well.
Why is that?
It's just because it's a HUD vetted program. So when we do point in time counts, it's all across the country. The point in time counts are managed in a way where we have to do it in certain forms. We have to enter it into a certain portal, and then HUD kind of scrubs the data. They're very interested in kind of deduplicating the different individuals that we see. They use a process to do that, and then after they kind of verify the numbers, then they come back to us. But I can let you know informally, we have an idea of how many people we've counted. It's similar numbers to last year. It's slightly more unhoused and unsheltered folks that we've counted this year.
So how do we identify the camps? We have to wait till HUD approves telling us?
No, so-
I'd like to see a last list of where the camps are,
Yes.
and based on the snapshot of that day, how many people are there, and I know it changes, but I'd like to get that
Yeah.
for the board as soon as we can on where these camps are.
Yes, that's an easy thing
And
for
then,
us to do.
you know, maybe the mayor talked about future presentation, how is that updated? How can a police officer, firefighter, public health person update that so that it's in real time? But I'd like to see that list as soon as possible, where the camps are,
Okay.
and based on that snapshot of time, how many people were in them.
Yes, I can prepare that too. We have a weekly encampment team meeting. We're monitoring all of the camps. We have a really good sense, not just from something like the pit count, but from outreach teams that go out in the community, from our nonprofit partners,
we can
from our
have that in
police
a week?
department. Oh, we have it currently. I mean, I didn't prepare it to bring it with me tonight, but that's something that we're currently monitoring and tracking on a
But you could
week-to-week
email it
basis.
to the mayor and the board within a week.
Absolutely, yeah.
Locations and the count based on a certain date. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes. I will go back and I will prepare the different data sets that we kind of talked about tonight, including the encampment numbers, and I'll put that all together in the best way to come back to the board and provide that. And anything in the meantime, let me know, email me, and I can add it in.
One more comment. I was always going down there donating things, just to let you know.
Thank you so much for your donations. We really appreciate it.
Is there any other new business? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?